Welcome to another edition of the WCBL Game of the Week. I'm your host today, Clark Monroe with IKS Media. It's the final game of the week of the regular season, and boy, do we have a good one for you today as the Brooks Bombers are at Legacy Dodge Field to take on the Fort McMurray Giants in a huge battle for playoff positioning in the West Division. It's going to be a great game tonight. So if you're watching on YouTube right now and you're in the area, make sure you head to the ballpark and check this one out. There's a ton on the line tonight as these two teams battle it out. They are neck and neck for fourth place, the final playoff spot in the West Division. Fort McMurray, of course, coming off a dramatic weekend where they forfeited a couple of games against Okotoks. Stay tuned. There might be some more information coming on that, but as of right now, they hold on to the fourth position in the West, and Brooks is right behind them, just one win behind them. So tonight's game could go a long way for either team cementing their position in that West Division. The crazy bottom half of the West Division as three teams duke it out for that playoff spot. And we'll check that out in a little while as to how that's all going to play out in the next 5 or 6 days. There's a lot going on, and it's going to be a really exciting finish to the season, especially in the West Division. There is some action from last night that I'd love to just go over, which has a lot to do with what's going on tonight. As you can see, last night, the Regina Red Sox and Moose Jaw Miller Express scored a combined total of 31 runs as Regina took a 20-11 win over Moose Jaw in Regina at Curry Field last night. Saskatoon is one win closer to setting the WCBL regular season wins record with a 5-4 win over Weyburn last night. Sylvan Lake took a huge 5-4 win over Energy City. The reason that one is huge is because Sylvan Lake is really trying to cement themselves in the second playoff spot in the West, while Energy City is in that battle for that fourth and final playoff spot. That loss is huge for them. It has a lot of implications for them. They need to find a way to string some wins together in this final week if they want a chance to get themselves into the playoff dance. This was a big one. Obviously, it's a rematch of last night's game tonight. Tonight's game is a rematch of last night's game. Fort Mac took a 6-2 win over the Brooks Bombers last night, which puts Fort Mac solidly into the fourth position. They currently sit one win up now, both on Energy City and on Brooks. So a win in tonight's game for Fort Mac could put them 2 games up on Brooks. They really, really want this win tonight. Brooks can't let that happen. So that's why tonight's game is so massive. And then Okotoks took a 6-4 win on the road in Lethbridge. Again, Okotoks is sitting in first place in the West. We'll have a look at the standings now, actually, just to kind of see how it all sits as we head into tonight's action across the league, and specifically tonight's game in Fort McMurray. Okotoks has a 2-game lead, or a 3-game lead technically, over Sylvan Lake right now. 2 wins over Sylvan Lake at the moment, and you'll see why Sylvan Lake and Lethbridge have a huge couple of days coming up as well later on in the show as we look ahead to the remaining week of the season. But Okotoks does have a 2-win lead over Sylvan Lake. 4 wins over Lethbridge right now as they sit 4 games up on the Bulls. And as you can see, that bottom of the West is so important right now because Fort Mac, Energy City, and Brooks are all so close with their win percentages, with their win totals. So that's going to come down right to the last day. And the best part is as we'll see in a moment, they all play each other at least a couple of times the last stretch of the regular season. In the East Division, quickly, as you can see, Saskatoon is inching their way closer to the regular season wins record of 44 wins set by the Sylvan Lake Gulls last season. So it's a huge chance for them tonight and into the weekend to possibly set that record. All they need is 2 wins. They play, I believe, Regina tonight, so it's going to be an interesting one for them. Medicine Hat has locked in their spot in second place, so they're just awaiting their opponent in the playoffs right now, as it probably is going to be Regina, but there is a chance that Moose Jaw could win out and Regina could lose out. Moose Jaw could still potentially pass Regina for the 3rd spot, but more or less it's going to be Saskatoon versus Moose Jaw and Medicine Hat versus Regina in the first round of the East Division playoffs, unless that all changes, of course, in the last week of the season. Weyburn and Swift Current have been eliminated, unfortunately for them, but at the same time, they have been playing some really good baseball all season, and they continue to finish out their season strong. So they will be looking to play some spoilers if possible, but they'll also be looking to just finish out the season in a really strong way, as both teams will not lay down and become a welcome mat by any stretch. They're going to put up some good fights the rest of the way. Let's have a look at the league leaders now, just as we continue to look around the league before we dive in specifically to tonight's matchup. As you can see, Bernie Sakaris has taken the lead in batting average since yesterday's edition of the WCBL report with myself and Joe McFarland, where Ethan Menard was leading the league, and he now holds the leaderboard in terms of batting average across the league. He's had such a great season since coming to Lethbridge a little bit later than everybody else this season. You see Ethan Menard, possible MVP candidate, still hitting 400, still tied for the league lead in home runs, which we'll check out in a second. Barry Eisman and Connor Krausen for Okotoks have been so good in that back-to-back spot in that lineup. Those guys are so dangerous to face. And then you see a slew of other Saskatoon Berries. I say other ones. They're also very good. Obviously, Carter Beck, huge. He's a possible MVP candidate anytime he touches the field. Corey Waters has had a huge season for the Berries as well. You see Mason Roll even down there. He's kind of come out of nowhere lately, and he's jumped up the leaderboards. And Abia Medina has been around the leaderboard for most of the season. Carter Roth for the Medicine Hat Mavericks, he was leading the league in batting average for about 75% of the season until Bernie Sakaris came along and took that from him. But he still continues to lead the league in at-bats, I believe, and I think hits as well. So he's right up there. And then Ben Fischel for tonight's, you'll see him tonight in tonight's matchup for Brooks. Ben Fischel has had such a good year, so strong, so consistent for the Brooks Bombers. A big reason why they still have a chance to get a playoff spot this week. So there's the league leaders in batting average. Let's take a look at home runs as we turn the page to the power category. We see Wilmer Henriquez. He has popped in to that top spot with Ethan Menard in the last little bit. He was sitting around 10 or 11 home runs for a while, but he has jumped into that tie for the lead. Ethan Menard, of course, again, MVP candidate. He's had such an amazing season for Saskatoon. Really been a huge reason why they have a chance to set the single season wins record for the WCBL. Zane Scansey is an MVP candidate for Okotoks as he continues to put together a very, very strong season. Corey Waters is up there with 10 home runs as well, now hitting double digits. Jack Kaliski for Lethbridge has been such a strong player for the Bulls for several years now. As you see him with 9, there's 5 guys tied for 9th with Evan Morrison of Medicine Hat, Ethan Murdoch of Saskatoon, William Edwards, who's been an amazing player for the Moose Jaw Miller Express, filling a big hole that they needed to fill at the beginning of the season. William Edwards has been so good. And of course, Carter Beck. He's the type of player who could end up leading the league in home runs by the end of this week if he just puts together 5 or 6 solid games for Saskatoon. And of course, Matthew Fox, who, if you watched yesterday's edition of the WCBL report with myself and Joe McFarland, we talked about Matthew Fox, who has played such a huge role for the Regina Red Sox this year as they have lost a few of their really, really key contributors on the offensive side. Matthew Fox has jumped in. He's now in the top of the leaderboards. 4 home runs, and he was an all-star this year, has a great batting average. So Matthew Fox has kind of been an unsung hero, if you want to call it that, for the Regina Red Sox, but he has been a huge part of what they've been able to do this season and putting in together a playoff performance, or a playoff team, I should say, for the regular season. Now let's have a look at the pitching leaders. As we come into tonight's game, there's a couple of members of the Fort McMurray Giants on this list. Luke Glenn and KJ Jones have put together such a reliably strong, consistent regular season so far. They're going to be huge if Fort Mac can make the playoffs. They're going to be a big reason why they might actually put up a good fight against, if it's the top seed Okotoks Dogs or whoever ends up finishing in first place in the West. They will be a reason why that first round matchups might not be something to overlook. Fort Mac has a really good chance if they can find themselves in that final spot. We'll see how this week plays out. But of course, Levi Abbott, MVP candidate kind of player for the Lethbridge Bulls. He's sneaking up there in terms of he's close to actually catching Weston Walls for the strikeout leaderboard as well. But he is going to run away with the ERA leaderboard and many other categories. He's right near the top. Blake Johnson for the Red Sox, of course, he's no longer with the team. He has left the team, so that's a big blow for them, but he had such a good season. Xander Roberts has been so good all year for the Medicine Hat Mavericks. Another MVP candidate or top pitcher candidate type of player. Tristan Harley has snuck in there for the Energy City Cactus Rats. You see Brett Getz, he's been in the top 8 in ERA pretty much all season long for Lethbridge. And then Ian Heck, an all-star caliber player. He's going to go down as one of the better players in Weyburn Beavers history, if I say so myself. So a great list here, a couple of great players. But again, keep an eye on Luke Glenn and KJ Jones for the Fort McMurray Giants as we head into tonight's action. I'm not exactly sure who the starting pitchers are going to be for either team tonight. If it's one of those guys, you're in for a treat. It's going to be a great game. But as we kind of switch gears, as we look into tonight's matchup a little bit more specifically, we like to look at both teams' leaders in terms of their individual hitter stats and individual pitcher stats. So let's have a look now at the Brooks Bombers as we head into tonight's action. Who's leading the way for Brooks? Obviously, a pretty solid hitting team. You see Ben Fischel leading the way. We talked about him a little bit in the batting average leaderboards. Ben Fischel's had such a great season, and Peyton Matthews, two big reasons why the Brooks Bombers hold on to playoff hopes as we head into the final week. CJ Snowden has had a really good year. You see Wyatt Ormond over on the other side there, 282 average. He's had a really great year as well. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he was their home run derby candidate during the All-Star week. So All-Star weekend, I should say. So a big bat there as well. Don't overlook Wyatt Ormond. But this team goes with Ben Fischel and Peyton Matthews most nights. So if they're going, they have a good chance of putting up a W. As we look at their pitching staff, maybe not so strong. I'm sure that head coach Dylan DeBrouwer would like this to maybe look a little bit differently going forward. As you can see, only two guys under a 5 ERA in this top 10 leaderboard here for them, and that, of course, is Hudson Groh and Julian Pokorny. The rest of the pitching staff, probably not numbers they would like to put up. Of course, you have to remember Brooks plays in a very hitter-friendly ballpark, so half their games, of course, have been there. It's tough to keep the runs down in that ballpark most nights, so that maybe take these numbers with a bit of a grain of salt in that case, but still interesting to see a very solid hitting team. The pitching hasn't really been there in terms of their numbers, at least for the duration of the regular season. So tough to see this, and I'm sure Brooks would like to have those numbers come down. And if they do end up making the playoffs, they're going to have to find a way to keep those numbers down if they want a chance at all in the first round of the playoffs. Let's have a look now over at the Fort McMurray Giants. As you can see, their hitting isn't quite where Brooks is. It's kind of the opposite case in terms of the two teams we're seeing tonight in action. Fort Mac, very strong pitching team, hitting up and down, inconsistent, let's call it. Whereas Brooks has some really great hitting numbers, pitching not so good. So this is a very interesting kind of battle of inertia, almost a movable object versus unstoppable force, if you want to call it that. But as you can see, still a couple of very solid seasons in this lineup. You see Elijah Olable, who I believe was an all-star this year at the WCBL All-Star Weekend. Nick Sauvé, another all-star candidate as well. And Matt Rhodes was the winner of the Home Run Derby. So they can still do some damage on this roster. It's just a matter of putting it all together and getting some runs. But luckily for them, as we look over at their pitching staff, luckily for them, they haven't needed to put up a ton of runs this year because their pitching has been so solid. As you can see, a ton of guys in the 3 ERAs, Eli McKean in the 2s. We have a bunch of guys in the 4s. And a couple of those guys, Ash Amerlin has been so good in the recent weeks, I should say, putting up some great numbers, some player of the week type numbers. As he continues he has 61 strikeouts. He's near the top of the leaderboard in terms of strikeouts. You see KJ Jones and Luke Glenn, who we talked about earlier on in the WCBL leaderboards in terms of ERA. Those guys have been so good, keeping the runs down for Fort McMurray. And Sam Rambajan as well, just solid over there. So these guys have, any day that these guys put out their ace pitching staff or their good pitching staff, they have a really good chance of keeping the runs down and putting a win on the board by pitching alone. So they have a really strong pitching staff over in Fort McMurray, and it's great to see because this is what's going to happen over the next week or so for these two teams, Brooks and Fort McMurray. Let's look at the standings actually one more time, if you don't mind. Director Bryce with IKS, thank you for joining in. Thanks for jumping in and helping out with that today, Bryce. But as you can see, Fort Mac with 19 wins, Energy City with 18 wins, Brooks with 18 wins. They're all within a win of each other. And the next week, as we look ahead to who these teams will play, we're going to focus in on these 3 teams specifically. But as you can see, Fort McMurray, 6 games remaining. Brooks has 5 games. Energy City with 7. You can see on the left, Fort McMurray plays Brooks for the next 3 days. So tonight, tomorrow, and on Saturday as well, Fort McMurray will be playing Brooks. And as you can see, on Brooks' side as well, they play Fort McMurray for the next 3 games. So these 3 games, including last night, it's technically 4 because they played each other last night. Fort McMurray got the win. So 4 games in a row. This is pretty much going to make or break this could make or break. Unless they split the series, this could make or break one or the other in terms of making the playoffs. It's going to be very, very interesting. And then, of course, for Fort McMurray, it gets more interesting because they play Energy City for the last 3 games of the season, including a doubleheader. So it's going to be interesting for them. They play the 6 teams, though that's the 2 teams, but all 6 games are against the 2 teams that they need to keep down and they need to beat in order to make the playoffs. So in terms of these 3 teams, Fort McMurray really, really holds their own fate in their own hands. They can basically decide themselves if they're going to make the playoffs or not, simply by beating the teams that they need to beat here. We'll stay on that screen for just a second here. As we can see, Brooks, again, they play Fort McMurray 3 games in a row, but then they face Lethbridge, so a very difficult opponent to finish off the season with 2 games. And then for Energy City, they play Sylvan Lake, but then Okotoks for the next 3 games, I should say, then Sylvan Lake. And then they see Fort McMurray to end off the season. So it's going to be a tough 4 games for them leading into that final stretch against Fort Mac in the final 2 days. But if they can put themselves into a strong position to be close, and then they can find a way to get some wins against Fort McMurray to finish off the season, look out for Energy City. They could find a way to get themselves into that playoff spot as well. So it's going to be a dogfight all the way down to the wire as those 3 teams, but these 2 teams who are playing tonight specifically, have so much on the line. The key for tonight's game, as I mentioned, it's going to be Brooks. If they can find a way to beat the Fort McMurray pitching staff, they have a good chance. If they can, and then at the other side, if Fort McMurray's bats can come alive and find a way to get some numbers against this pitching staff for Brooks, who have kind of been inconsistent and unreliable this season for the general duration of the season, then it's going to be a very interesting game there as well. Can Fort McMurray use a home field advantage a little bit? We'll have to see, but it's going to depend on, I'm going to say the key to tonight's game for both teams is whose unreliable, inconsistent side is going to come to play tonight and have a good game. Is it going to be Fort McMurray's bats, or is it going to be Brooks pitching? I think either way, if one of those things can come to fruition and be strong, I think that team has a good chance to win tonight's game. Just as a way to kind of wrap up the show, we don't have any interviews for you today, unfortunately, with the coaches, just due to some scheduling conflicts. But as we look ahead to the rest of the league and the next few days, as we come to the final week of the regular season, let's have a look at the schedules here. So tonight's matchups, you see Energy City against Okotoks for a doubleheader. Energy City is technically the home team in this one, I believe, but it is at Siemens Stadium in Okotoks tonight. Lethbridge plays Sylvan Lake. That's a huge one in terms of the battle for second place in the West. Sylvan Lake has a 2-win advantage over Lethbridge right now, but Sylvan Lake has played more games, so Lethbridge has a chance to catch up. A big win tonight would go a long way for Lethbridge if they want a shot at it. Weyburn plays Moose Jaw tonight. Moose Jaw still technically has a chance to move up the standings in the East Division, so keep an eye on that one, as Moose Jaw needs a win, especially since they lost last night against Regina. This is a big one for them. They need a win here to keep their hopes alive. Otherwise, they're probably looking at a 4th place finish. Medicine Hat has locked up their place in 2nd in the East Division. So this one tonight, not a ton of implications on the line, but both teams want to finish out the season strong. And Swift Current has been playing some really good baseball and want to finish out strong at home in front of their home crowd. So it should be a solid game there. Tonight's game, of course, Brooks and Fort McMurray. We talked a lot about that one and the importance in tonight's game. So keep an eye. Obviously, you're watching this, so a good chance you're probably going to be watching the game. And Saskatoon is in Regina taking on the Red Sox. Again, Saskatoon is just 2 wins away. 1 win from tying, 2 wins away from setting the WCBL regular season wins record. We'll have a look at Friday's schedule now. Again, Saskatoon remains in Regina to take on the Red Sox. So they have a chance over the next 2 days to set the season record against Regina, which I'm sure that they would love to do as an East Division rivalry heats up there. Lethbridge remains in Sylvan Lake to take on the Gulls. So these next 2 days for those 2 teams is massive. These wins could go a long way. Energy City remains in Okotoks for another game against the Dogs. These Brooks Bombers and Fort Mac Giants will play again tomorrow as well as Saturday, but we'll have a look at that later. Medicine Hat goes to Weyburn to play the Beavers, and Swift Current takes on Moose Jaw on Friday night. And then on Saturday, to head into the weekend on a high note, there's some great games as well. Again, Brooks and Fort McMurray, they play each other again. So by Saturday's game, we could determine who might be in the strong point in terms of finishing in 4th for that playoff spot in the West. Regina heads to Saskatoon. They flip venues. They continue playing each other. So that'll be interesting. I'm sure by Saturday, these 2 teams will be a little bit there'll be a little bit of tension there by Saturday, I'm sure, after playing each other for the third time in a row. Okotoks again, or they play Lethbridge, so that could be a huge matchup in terms of Okotoks locking down their spot in first place. We'll see what happens with Lethbridge Sylvan Lake in terms of where Lethbridge will be at that point. Medicine Hat plays Weyburn again. Swift Current plays Moose Jaw again. Again, the East Division playoff scenario is pretty much wrapped up. So not a ton on the line in those games, but both teams will want to play hard to finish off their seasons. I'm talking about Weyburn and Swift in that regard. And then Energy City at Sylvan Lake. Again, Sylvan Lake could lock up second place at this point. Energy City's still going to be fighting for that fourth spot. So it's going to be an interesting week. It's going to be a great finish in the WCBL regular season, but it all starts tonight in Fort McMurray at Legacy Dodge Field. I know everybody's going to be really interested in keeping an eye on this game across the league, but everybody in attendance, you're in for a treat. It's going to be a great game tonight. So with that said, and everything coming along really, really well in terms of all the implications for tonight's game, please enjoy it. It's going to be a great one for everybody at IKS Media. I'm Clark Monroe. Now we're going to head to Legacy Dodge Field for tonight's matchup between the Brooks Bombers and Fort McMurray Giants. Enjoy the baseball, everybody.